If you're a seeker or a seer or on a spiritual journey, and at the same time trying to mindfully navigate the human journey and the reality of these radically changing, unpredictable times we're living in, this show's for you.
I don't know if we need necessarily a way out. We just need a way through. This is breaking us open. What we're going through right now on all levels is really breaking open humanity.
It's because we chose to incarnate here now and have this human experience. So how do we balance that and kind of feel like there's this overwhelm, an acceleration, and how do we ground ourselves and stay present while keeping awareness of that greater picture? And it becomes this freaking teeter-totter and seesaw that's very difficult to navigate on the daily basis because of the dense reality and things that are coming up and the stress of that. And what we're hearing all the time is nervous system regulation and ground and, walk in the grass and like journal, like all of these wonderful things, right? But they're not sustainable. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Nurturing Astrology podcast. I'm so glad you're here, and thanks for tuning in. Let's dive into today's show. Welcome back to Nurturing Astrology, everyone. I'm Dominique, your astrologer and host, and today I have a very special guest with me today, Sarah Wilson. Sarah is a born seer, intuitive, healer, and shaman, as well as a lifelong international conservationist, working much of her career across Africa. Guided by a deep bond with animals, especially horses and dogs, she created a practice devoted to their healing. Blending intuition with reverence for nature, she helps people and animals alike, as she says, serve as a voice for those who cannot speak. Her path reflects a lifetime of cross-cultural connection with both humans and the natural world. Welcome, Sarah. I'm so excited you're here, and we're finally having you on the show.
Thank you so much. That was a really generous introduction. Wow, who would have guessed that we have known each other for nearly 6 years now? Yeah. So yeah, it's been a long time since my first reading with you.
So Sarah was an astrology client of mine years ago and a student for a couple of years. And then since then has become a dear friend, soul sister, and source of great wisdom and inspiration and guidance in my life.
I just want to say I'm so grateful for everything you've taught me. I'm grateful for you being there when we both need each other and for your openness in integrating, I would say, my gifts into the world of astrology and teaching me about that realm. I think it's the value of having our friendship and being able to understand each other at that level has been amazing. And you've really inspired me to incorporate astrology into my daily life and to incorporate astrology into the gifts that I already have. So thank you so much for that, Dominique.
Oh, you're so welcome. Yeah, I really had a wonderful time teaching you and learning myself. And it really actually helped me lean into my own intuitive gifts. And that's kind of the beautiful blend that I think our friendship brought that we're going to dive into here. And I think one of the main reasons why we wanted to do this show and why we wanted to kind of bring these conversations we have on a daily basis or like weekly when we're checking in to, a broader audience. So, but I'd love to dive into a little bit more about you so people can get to know you a little bit. Okay. So you describe yourself as a seer and an intuitive. So at what point in your life did you kind of realize this was who you were, or that you experienced the world differently than most people or than other people?
That's a good question. I think when I was very young, I had a couple very remarkable premonitions of things that were coming that really woke me up to my psychic abilities. Mm-hmm. And I noticed that other people weren't having the same things happen. But, at that age, I was probably my first time I remember that might have been when I was about 6. It was largely dismissed. It was one of those things we didn't really talk about and we just let it pass. So I think, that's really when it sort of started coming into me.
I see. So your connection then with animals and nature, how did that become a part of the journey?
Well, I grew up with animals. Oh, okay. When I was little, I manifested my first pony when I was probably like 6 or 7 years old.
Oh, yeah, I remember you telling me that story.
Yeah. So I've been involved with ponies and horses since I was very tiny. And throughout this time, also, we always had, family dogs. And later in life, I had a decision to change my career from international wildlife conservation to working on horses and dogs and really delving into the healing of horses and dogs. And they were huge in opening the door for me into the unseen realm and into the connection between beings, really understanding how we could connect and how we could learn from their wisdom. So a lot of what I actually see as my own gifts are things that were taught to me by horses mostly, but also by dogs. And that also, I guess, opened me up to my own innate shamanic wisdom or gifts as a healer, which I didn't really realize I had. So that was a really exciting time.
So you were into conservation and animals, like caring about sort of the natural world first, and then you went into your spiritual healing of them when you left that world, that industry a little bit, and then translated that into helping people. Is that kind of the way it went?
Yeah, actually it is. When I left conservation and decided to actually relocate back to the United States and start a horse and dog healing business, that was really my focus. And I think what happened then was I just really was opened up to my own intuitive gifts and healing gifts at the time. And that led me into sharing that with people as well. And it was a very organic process. It just sort of, once the door opened, you walk through it and it just sort of happened. So yeah, I think that's about the trajectory.
Gotcha. So for people who may not fully kind of understand what it is to be intuitive or to perceive the world the way you do, like, can you describe what that feels like or how you receive information from the spirit world or from your guides?
Yeah, I think even since a young age, I felt like I would have sort of flashes of imagery that would come across to me. And as I grew up, and even, with teachers, professors, or even bosses, sometimes, I would get these metaphysical sort of like images that were like, I guess I would say metaphorical images that would come up, and it's something that becomes a language. If you start to listen to it, it's a knowing that comes through, and it arrives before the logic does. So if you can let the logic go and let the mind go, I actually get metaphorical images as my primary input. I also have all of the clairs. So when we talk about the clairs, we're talking about clairvoyance, being able to see, clairaudience, hearing, clairsentience, feeling, and claircognizance when you just get that knowing. So all of the clairs are there, but my primary language, I would say, is through sort of metaphorical image. Yeah. And it becomes a language that gets expanded. And most people, I think, don't realize they have this, but everybody has this in them in some level. And it's a matter of being able to accept it and trust it without talking yourself out of it.
Yeah, I was just going to say,
really yeah,
the logic can come in and kind of shut that down, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Right. You can easily. And how did you learn to sort of distinguish between Sarah's mind and the logic and the intuitive knowings that were coming in? I think that's a hard thing that people struggle with. I know myself included, especially being so much air, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, me being a double Pisces, and I think I sort of live in that zone. So there's a place where it's very natural for me. And I do tend to, I guess, go into my inward self. And I spend time sort of what I would say in other dimensions in a way. So I think having that sort of almost rapport is natural for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, even reading for myself, I mean, I always say every intuitive has an intuitive and every astrologer has an astrologer.
Yeah.
And I think that the reason for that is being able to get an objective read on what you're seeing, because we can interpret something the way we want it to be. And it's really, for me, it's more about the discernment of what's the information I'm getting, and is that information, am I interpreting that from as it's really meant to be, or am I interpreting that just to make myself feel better?
Right.
Or,
that's the truth.
And sometimes you do need that hope. Sometimes you do need something to lift yourself up. So it's not always bad to do that. But I think with reading for others, in keeping something very, a reading very clean, it's really, really important to be able to separate them. How to separate them, I think, is an individual thing. For me, I know my language now. So I know when I'm getting, it's a very different feel of logic, mind running, and the information that just comes in. So for me, it's almost like two separate things, and I'm able to separate it out. And in terms of, for other people, I think it's a matter of exploration of how are they receiving their information, and then how can we suss out and help them discern what is the actual information that's coming in that's intuitive against what is sort of your mental processing, right?
So I think you would agree, especially knowing as much astrology as you do now, that there are astrology markers of somebody who has maybe a clearer, stronger connection organically or naturally, that they can hone that skill. But as a lot of people say, we all have them. It just might take a little bit more effort to create your own language or to tune in and build that skill. I feel like that's been the case for me, someone who is very open, but also very much in my, feels, and but in a way that like wants to logically understand or share information that it comes from a logical place, and trusting those intuitive things that are coming through. I think that's where this whole kind of thing came from, is me always being in my head thinking that it's the chart or the astrology that's giving me the wisdom, but you've helped show me that actually there's actually a lot of knowing that comes in, and intuitive hits that come in while I'm reading that I don't always honor in that way. I always have the chart to point to. Right?
Yeah, I think the chart is for me, it's become a really great sort of reality check, especially on my own reading for myself.
Yeah.
Because it is always hardest to read for yourself, like I said, to be able to keep it objective. But it is a really great way to sort of reality check what you're getting. Are you on the right path? And I think the other thing I wanted to say about the intuition, which I've learned through, I have done some specific detailed courses on like forensic intuition and things like that. So, when you look at it that way, it's not about building a story. So the language you're getting, you have to really take it piece by piece and really keep it as clean as you can, because we can go off and sort of build a story of what we think is going on, but that can lead you down a sort of dangerous path, because it may not be the way the information is actually meant to be given. Yeah.
I've heard John Edwards talk about that you have to trust, and even other people that I know that are intuitives or have that ability, you have to trust the first thing that comes in, and you have to just share that, and you have to be careful not to build that story around it. And I think similarly, you can build a story around astrology as well. You can see a transit, and you can see something happening, and you're like, oh, and you could easily build a story. Now, if you take the chart in context with the person you're reading, which I obviously think is what you should do. It's like, because you have to meet a client where they are in their life, what they may be navigating, then their life can show, wakes up the chart, and you can guide somebody on their journey based on the chart, but not without the context of their story. And so that's the thing. You have the story and what could be happening, and then you have their life, and you can blend those. And I think that's the gift of every astrologer, is learning how to blend their own gifts and knowledge and wisdom in a way that serves the client. And when I started to, you actually got me on this boat of teaching and mentoring, because I didn't want to do it, right? I've never done that before. And what I thought was really great is you have these beautiful gifts already. And so astrology was something that you could add to that, not replace, but how to integrate. And I think in teaching you how to integrate astrology in a way that works for you, in using your intuitive gifts, you've actually inspired me to use them in my readings, to trust my intuition and build that intuition. So, I mean, I've always seen myself as a seeker. And ever since I was young, I was always curious about those like big questions of why are we here? And I wanted to understand the meaning behind all of these things. But then, I always loved all kinds of divination tools. I love the tarot. We love numerology. We love, I love psychics and all of these things. It was always so fascinating. But astrology was the thing that made everything click for me. And I could just really, even as a professional, I had something to point to, right? That a framework to sort of work in to help people with. And it also helped me on my own journey. I could see things that had happened in retrospect in my life and then realize that it wasn't that my life was being dictated by the stars, but that I could co-create. I could understand, I could see what was happening, I could work with that like the weather, you know what I mean? And for me, it's interesting that our friendship is kind of like created that balance of teaching me intuition and to trust my knowings. I know as an Aquarius, everyone says, oh, like you have knowings, right? But I didn't feel safe or trust myself to share information that was coming here without something to point to tangibly and to translate into some sort of logic. Because I felt it gave me credibility, which I think it can, and unfortunately there are a lot of, people who take advantage, who have gifts and take advantage of people, right? When they have these gifts that you can't point to anything. So there's lots of people who see like seeking and someone who's like seeking knowledge and understanding and seeing as two different things, right? Because you have like this natural connection as a seer and an intuitive. So do you think they're different? Can they be blended? Are they the same thing? Or what do you think? And how did astrology come to you in a way that like started to blend those gifts for you?
So to answer your first question, I think that seeking and seeing are in a sense, I think we're all seekers, but I think the seeing part for me is I do tend to reach out into the future and feel energy coming at me. I can also look at the past and sort of have things interpreted and get information that way. But the reason I'm classify myself more as a seer is because I am more predictive. I tend to be reaching out in front of where we are and where are we going and how do we get there.
Yeah.
I think the seeking for me is more like the astrological side, to be honest. It really is the side of, that endless desire to learn forever, which is what astrology requires you to do.
Yep.
Because I don't think there's any astrologer out there who says they know everything. And so it is
if they do, they're wrong.
Right. Yeah. No, it's an endless study. But then, the seer part of me is something that's just sort of innate, that where information comes into me and I'm able to sort of, I guess I would say, interpret it and integrate it into what it needs to be for a client or whoever I'm speaking to.
But you still have to hone those skills, right? I mean, I know you can hone your skills and learn as a seeker, and I can study and study and study. And I think the application is where the intuition can come in. Yes. How does that work for a seer if you already, what is the practice of developing that seeing? Is there one?
I think there are people who take courses, psychic courses, or they take courses in intuitive readings, that kind of thing. So that can give you structure and framework to get into it. Part of I guess part of my reticence for that is a bit about the same reason I came to you for astrology is everybody's going to have their own way of interpreting. So some people, like I said, you might use a different clair as a primary. Other people might only have one clair. So you might only get clairaudience. Other people may prefer tools. So they may prefer some kind of divination tool like tarot or something else to help to guide them. Runes or whatever it is. For me, it's just something that is there. So it's not something that I've had to really overly develop. But one thing I'm developing all the time is the language. So there are things that I am shown that I can sometimes go back and be like, wait a minute, I got this image, but I'm really not sure which direction we're going with this. So I almost have to add, it's almost like with tarot cards where you ask for a clarifier, right? And so asking for that clarification and saying, okay, like, what does this actually mean in this context? And then you get more information. But as you build out that language, I feel as though it becomes more and more powerful. So over time, especially since I've stepped into doing what I do, which is the intuitive readings and working with people and animals, that has grown for sure. And I use all the clairs, so I'm getting information from all different sides. Right? And so I also am more, I guess, aware of how I'm incorporating those than I used to be. So having it innately, you just sort of have it. But I guess the answer to your question is if someone were to be like, oh, well, you say I have intuitive abilities. How do I access that? I think
Yeah.
part of it is really figuring out how to discern and how to be in a quiet place inside of yourself where you're not
Yes.
constantly talking yourself out of the information you might be getting.
Oh,
And
that's
sometimes I
really
think
good.
it's hard because the information we receive might not be what we want to hear.
Oh,
It
yeah.
also may not be what the client wants to hear. So very often you have to be careful in your presentation. So, it's a matter
Yes.
of being that discerning part is the part that's a constant challenge, and staying, like I say, clean with your client on giving the information that's only for them, that isn't going off on a tangent. You need to make
Yeah.
sure you stay within the space. And if you are wandering outside the space, you have to sort of reset yourself and make sure that, you start back where you need to be.
Oh, yeah. That's so true. Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I think when you're talking about tarot and these other divination tools, I think for people who are leaning on the logic side, you're always looking for that answer or that confirmation from another tool. And the more
Right.
you start to learn your own language and trust and sit with, that connection of your own guides, the less you have to rely on those other things. And I've seen the evolution of even my astrology readings and sessions change the more that I have let that work within me. And we also have to be conscious as professional astrologers what we say about what we're seeing astrologically.
Oh, yes. Yes.
So there is some, I like this idea that you're saying, we have to be clean because, and also compassionate and be mindful of our words. It's, astrologers that like blurt out a bunch of information could really send somebody the wrong message, or they walk away feeling something that was not intended. So I think that's a really, really good point. So speaking of the astrology, let's kind of dive into that a little bit. So like part of the reason why we wanted to have this conversation, we've actually been talking about doing this for quite a long time. And we've been, working on this back and forth all through this Virgo-Pisces, transition of the nodes. And we've been really leaning into that and realizing that kind of is a basis for life, like the spiritual world and the practical everyday life, So part of the reason why we want to do this conversation is because it feels like so many of us are at this crossroads in our lives, internally, and in the physical, and what direction we're going to. And so many things are changing, right? It's like kind of like COVID, like was life before COVID, life after COVID. And there's more of that seemingly happening, right? A lot of astrologers are saying that there is this great awakening happening, right, on the planet. And we're all going through that. And we as you as seers, and even the astrology shows that, right? But there's this everyday existence at the same time that people are struggling with in their everyday lives. And that's real. Bills have to be paid, and you have to get the kids to school, and you've got to, navigate family and relationships. And it's a lot, all those responsibilities. And then there's the uncertainty of the future and what the world's going to look like. So first, I want to know, as a seer from you, how do you see this? What do you see? And could you give us first a little insight into sort of what you're seeing and maybe how the astrology has blended with that for you? Because you listen to a lot of astrology. We talk about this a lot. You listen to a lot of astrology. You have for years. You've been kind of really into it. And at the same time, you're seeing. You have an innate gift and ability to see. So share a little bit about what you see for humanity, and we'll talk then about like maybe some actual real things we can do and what that looks like.
That's a really good question. I think, just to go back to your point first, I think, yes, there is a reality of what we have to do now. And then there is this other discussion in the metaphysical world, particularly an astrological world of this great awakening. And yes, there's no question. We are in a time of transformation. We are in a time where everything that we thought was clear and defined and predictable, or fairly predictable, we are now realizing that is not the case anymore. We have like completely lost the plot. We have no control, let's be honest.
Yeah.
We got on this boat and we don't know where we're going. So, and there's not an easy way to get off, let's be honest, right? So when we look at that and we look at our everyday lives, I mean, I think we all just deserve a trophy just for still being here. But, it has been really challenging. And I think not everybody might feel that every day. Some people might be going through the greatest part of their life where they're like, this is amazing. But I think there are a lot of people who are being challenged. And I think the challenge is in the unknown, as you say. It's in the unknown, it's in the unpredictable and the unseen, we could say. And that's where, I'll be honest, being a double Pisces, I have been honing that skill for the past many years of, really not knowing what's going on, really not feeling like I'm in touch with where I'm going. And I think that has increased my intuition. It's increased my desire to find out what is going on, which brought me into astrology, right? But also, I think, we're not, this awakening that we're going through, I think we need to be honest that this isn't all unicorns and rainbows. There's no way. This is a transformation that's going to be work for everybody. It's going, I don't know if there's anybody on the planet who won't be touched by this. And of course, we all know that everything is temporary in life and there's always change, right? Just wait, something will change.
The one thing we can count on,
That's the one thing that's there. But I think this is really just sort of emphasized and heightened in this period that we're in. So that's sort of a preface. But when I look at what I'm seeing is I do think we're going through major shifts on the planet. And I think that it's both on, I don't want to get into the politics, but it's on a political level. It's on all levels. It's on a political level. It's on a physical level in terms of how our planet is progressing. Whether we look at natural disasters or we look at, other conflicts or things that are going on, or the good things, right? That are coming out of this. But I think as a humanity, what I see is I do see that people are both seeking and looking to learn how to see better so that they can predict their lives. So that they're getting more of a sensory input, I think, and trying to feel out, if I can't actually figure out what's going to go on, how can I feel my way through this? And I think that's where the awakening is really happening.
It's kind of like all the systems in the world, real world, right? In reality have failed us, are not working. And in the downgrade of that, in the destruction of that, it has forced people to look within, to reflect. And that's forced them to look within and discover and search for what do I believe in? What is working for me? And that has essentially opened up more and more people to this idea of, wow, I've always felt this. I've always gotten that. And I've not trusted it. And there's this idea of self-trust that's come in, I think, as a Pisces, and having a lot of Pisces and people who, even Virgos, who've had this Saturn through Pisces over the last few years, has been a big deal. And I remember saying years ago, before Saturn moved into Pisces, those 3 years are where it's going to be really, really important for us to create spiritual practices for self-care, for, tuning into ourselves, because what's coming is going to move much faster. It's going to be at work, and we need to be ready for that. And so I think part of the work for you, it's been tough, but you've been honing, because we're going to need more healers. We're going to need more guides, because as more people wake up and they're realizing, wait, the world is not what I thought it was. How do I navigate? What do I do? And so people with your gifts and healers and astrologers, more and more people can come together and serve humanity as everyone wakes up and knows and doesn't know what to do. Right? And I'd like, so we have to, at the same time, we're trying to arise our consciousness, awaken, if you will, and trust or even shift our belief system that there's more to us than this reality, and yet stay rooted here, fully in this body and having this experience, because we chose to incarnate here now and have this human experience. So how do we balance that and kind of feel like there's this overwhelm, an acceleration, and how do we ground ourselves and stay present while keeping awareness of that greater picture. And it becomes this freaking teeter-totter and seesaw that's very difficult to navigate on the daily basis because of the dense reality and things that are coming up and the stress of that. And what we're hearing all the time is nervous system regulation and ground and, walk in the grass, and like journal, like all of these wonderful things, right? But they're not sustainable. And I was having this conversation with a friend the other day. It's like, it's not sustainable to stay in a meditative state and an enlightened state all the time. It's not realistic. So we have to kind of figure out what works for us. And I'd love to kind of go into that, the ideas of what we can do. And I think that for me, it's been sort of like, yes, these practices are important. And meditation, like you say, getting into a quiet state so that we can connect with our guides is imperative. That's Pisces, right? And not spiritual bypassing or escaping, but even creating healthy escape, like getting off social or, putting down the devices or limiting your schedule, right? Saying I can only do so much in a day and having healthy boundaries. I think those are all really, really important. But the one thing that I realize has been a touchstone for me and is a middle way is connection. Is connection with another, with other people, groups. Like the connection that we've had over these last few years as we've watched so much happen and change in the world. Having our calls and connecting has been a grounding force, as well as a place to continually feel hopeful and inspired and trusting that we are being led to something bigger and something more meaningful, and not get sucked into and mired down into the dense reality and the outside story around us. So,
and I think that connection, Dominique, is imperative. And I think it's also, I don't think the connection we're talking about is the connection you might have with your spouse or with your mother or the people in your immediate household. These are people you have connection with daily. It's connection. I think the connection that I'm seeing is a connection as we have as friends, or you might have with a certain mentor or someone who you can actually trust. So it's someone outside of maybe the four walls in which you live, and really someone that can have an objective opinion, who can hear you, maybe just listen.
Yeah.
And I think there are times where both of us have been through a lot in the last few years of losing family members for you, and, going through employment issues, all sorts of things. And I think as we look at that, when you are really down and you're losing hope and you really can't see a way out, or you can't see a way forward, is to be able to pick up the phone or get on a Zoom or meet up with somebody and actually be able to have someone hear you and validate just the fact that you feel that way and that that's okay. And that, it's not surprising that you feel that way because of what you're going through. And I think that there's a lot of people who are offering to fix others, or to I guess I would say, intervene in people's lives and offer ways out. I don't know if we need necessarily a way out. We just need a way through. This is breaking us open. What we're going through right now on all levels is really breaking open humanity. And it's part of it is a matter of validation and acceptance of where we are as individuals, where we are as a collective, and knowing that it's okay to be scared, to have fear. That's normal, right? Or to have feelings of grief or loss or whatever we're going through, and having someone there who can hear that, but who can also help make sense of it. So an example is, if I'm feeling really, really down and I call you and we start to get into the chart, and I have my way of looking at the chart, and suddenly you bring up something that I hadn't thought of, and you're like, well, what if you look at it this way? It actually can open up doors that I come out of the conversation and say, oh, okay, wow, there might be a way out of this, or this has opened up another whole thought process or another whole way forward that I can explore. Or not, or maybe I just feel heard, and I just feel like it's okay to be me. So I think that there is that is really important right now. And I think it's super important for people to understand that as much as you might want a hermit, and I know how to do that as Pisces, and go and escape, into the other
Yeah.
dimensions, or just be by yourself and just say, I can deal with this. I can cope through it. Having that outlet of being able to talk to someone who can understand and who can validate your situation, just that simple process can
Yeah.
completely shift your energy. And it
Absolutely.
might be that you don't want to answer the phone, or you don't want to pick up the phone, or you don't want to be in contact with that person. But if you can just stop and meet them where they are and allow them to be there, and if they're a trusted person, I think that is really crucial in this time. Absolutely.
No doubt. As I was, having many conversations and people are struggling, it's like, yeah, I want to trust the universe. I know I want to trust divine timing. I don't know how many times we talk about trusting divine timing. When it doesn't come when we need it or we think we need it, we're like, am I not doing something right? Like, am I not trusting enough? Am I not enlightened enough? And then you start getting into that fear and doubt. And when I do that, I reach out to a friend, we have a conversation, or when I meet with my mom's group every moon cycle, it's like we look at the astrology, we reflect, and we realize, oh yeah, you're feeling that too? Oh my gosh, me too. I'm not alone. And there's a space for us to support each other. And that then inspires us to keep going, to go, yes, I understand why. Or we start to see the connections and realize we're all right on time. This is okay, and take that deep breath. Or reminding someone that and you're close with, hey, don't forget about you're still in this cycle. You're still in this cycle of Saturn. You're still dealing with that. It's still happening. So give yourself grace, give yourself time.
And
Because
also, I think the other thing, especially with the astrology, is looking for, where can we let that air out of the tire, which is something
right.
you taught me, is looking at, yes, I know about going through a Saturn return. After Saturn leaving my sign and now going through my Saturn return, you are looking for that place. Okay, well, where is there something that will give me a bit of relief, or which direction can I turn to feel that relief? And so I think finding that guidance, and that's something that astrology can
Yep.
absolutely help us do, because it can show us sort of the open door
Yeah.
that's right in front of us that we might not see.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
Yeah.
I think I think we're all seekers. I think we all have the ability to see. So there are this essence that we are both, and that because of the energies and the times that we're in collectively, we are all kind of waking up more and more to this, or seeking and opening our minds and ideas to exploring new things. This is very Uranus and Gemini. We are all like, our minds are like, whoa, and making this lovely aspect to Pluto and Aquarius, which are two very, slow moving planets in very fast moving element.
Right.
So it's like there's all of this stuff coming, and insights and ideas and possibilities, which is great. But we have to remember, this is going to take time. This isn't happening overnight. And I think from that larger perspective of Uranus and Pluto, bringing it back into just the polarity of Pisces and Virgo is a way of bringing it home to our everyday lives. And Pisces is, of course, that intuition and trusting in inner guidance, but it's also self-undoing and the things we do to escape, and whether it's going into food or alcohol or whatever it is to numb out and avoid the stress of what's happening in life. And Virgo is about, okay, get back to those daily routines, those things that are good for us, whether it's working out every day, being mindful of what we eat, journaling, meditation. But it's also a mercurial ruled sign, which means connection with another.
Right.
And having conversation to shift perspective, to bring more awareness, new ideas, new possibilities, to make us think. And so be able to use our logic and reasoning to go, okay, like, I'm really attached to the story today. I'm really attached to the reality today. But is that really the truth? Is that all there is? And how can I settle back into knowing that there's more to the story, that there's more than we can see happening? And most of the time that comes for me in conversation with another. When we get on a call and we get into, what's going on, and oh my gosh, the world, and let's look at the astrology, and what are you seeing, Sarah? This is something that's become like a regular thing that I realize has been a lifeline. And I feel like we agree everybody should have their Sarah or their Dominique. And I bet there are a lot of women out there who do have this kind of buddy system. I have several of them in my groups. You have women, people we walk with, people you run with, right? I think that's just as important. And I almost feel like connection is one of the biggest spiritual practices that we can have. And as we are there for another, it does take the emphasis and the focus off ourselves a little bit, which is healthy and good. So we can stop spiraling down and start spiraling up again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I one of the things I was thinking about was during the pandemic is where we built pods of gals to run with, because we had our running teams, but all of a sudden we were basically not able to do that and broken up. And we decided to create these pods of friends who would run together, and being able to go out and run 10 miles in the hills with your friends every Sunday. It was something that was really, really needed. And it was a way for us to make sense of what was going on around us and to share. And it was a way for us to also have all of those great, enzymes hit your system while you're moving, right?
Yeah.
And actually, we found a lot of joy and just sort of camaraderie and understanding for each other. We had people, in the healthcare field, people in the retail world, all different types of people who came together. And there was only about 8 of us, but still from all different walks of life, and being able to share so that we all knew that, no one is actually really enjoying this. And this is a really tough time, but being able to, share and give each other hope through it and laugh through it is really important.
Yeah.
And I think also, when we talk about being able to see, I think another thing in staying grounded, a lot of people think it is what you were saying, go put your feet in the grass or hug a tree. Right. But I think one of the things, that is most grounding for certain people, if you look at your chart, is, it might be activity. So it could be running. It could be just those basic hearing your steps hit the ground, as you're in your breath, or it might be walking, the monotony of walking, where you can actually just sort of get in a rhythm and zone out. And so there are, there are so many ways that you can ground in, and so many ways that you might be able to also receive your own information. Yeah. And I was thinking the other day, Pisces very often, I love listening to Minnow Pond, Chris Reck, and he always says, I got that in the shower, but he's a Pisces, right? So, the water's flowing, and that happens to me all the time. You could be washing the dishes or taking a shower, and all of a sudden, when your mind is on that one other thing that has taken up some space in your mind, that's when you might get information coming in. Absolutely. And I think that's a really key thing. If you are wondering, building your intuition doesn't mean you actually have to sit and meditate and you have to be in a necessarily quiet space. It can, and it can help for some. And for others, it might just come through actual activity in that you have your mind occupied enough that it allows information to come in. So it's sort of distracting you enough that you're not overthinking something.
I agree. And I think for people who have strong air, that might be the case, because your mind needs to be kind of on something else or distracted if you can't quiet. And that's been the work for me, is to really figure out and practice quieting the mind, or letting they say, let the thoughts flow in and out, right? It's like, oh, well, there's a lot in there. So maybe it is those times when I'm doing something else, the dishes or whatever, and things come through because the mind is focused on something else. So I do think we can look at our chart, and what we need, even the simple moon sign, in terms of what we need to stabilize that nervous system. Everyone's talking about nervous system regulation. And if your moon is fire, you're going to need movement to kind of regulate. For me, it's air. So definitely regulation happens through conversation, where I'm sitting and listening and learning from somebody else. It helps me settle. I breathe more. Breath for an air person, right? Breathing, listening, it slows me down. I've noticed that when I'm not regulated, I talk even faster. I talk faster. You know what I mean? You know this, you've witnessed this, and it gives me a chance to stop and regulate. And for water, they're, getting into water, into nature, and fire too, needing to move. And then earth, like slowing down, checking out. Maybe they're the ones who really like to hug the tree or walk in the grass. maybe that really works for them.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
and I think I think that's something that's really important is there's no one way to ground, and there's no
No.
one way, there's no cookie cutter way. We all are
Yep.
individuals. We have our individual blueprint, not only shown to us through the chart, but as we know. And so I think so on all levels, being able to sort of figure out what works for you. So
Yeah.
maybe people
Yeah.
just need to do more time seeking to really figure out what might work for them, and how can they tap into sort of the deeper messages that are coming.
Absolutely. I love this. Awesome. This has been so great, Sarah. I really feel like this has been something that we have been living for a long time now. And so we, like I said in the beginning, wanted to maybe just start recording and sharing with people, because we always end up at the end of our calls feeling like what we discussed or what we talked about could serve more people than just you and I. And so here, we finally got you on. We're finally having this conversation, and we're just literally tipping the iceberg here. But we kind of came to the idea that this seeker and seer is something that we all kind of are, right? We all are navigating right now. And maybe we should keep doing it. What do you think?
I think, yeah, I think it's great.
I think that we could dive into a lot of different aspects of what Seeker and Seer is, also in terms of how we're navigating the world right now, in these crazy, crazy times. So, whether you're an astrologer, you're an intuitive, or we want to blend this idea of astrology or intuition, or how do we ground every day and navigate life and live in the present moment, while dealing with all that's going to be going on. And it's not going to change, and it's going to start moving faster and faster. So we're, finding those circles, those groups, those outlets where you can feel seen and heard, and, that you can relate to provide that what we're showing, the connection is, could we be a source for people to come and listen and connect with us, to feel that sense of, okay, I'm not alone. And that might be something fun for us to do and provide. I would love to do that. So whether you landed here because by accident or on purpose, we're certainly glad you're here. Do you have any thoughts or final things you want to share, or hopes that you want to leave with people?
I think it's important for people to understand that, as the world gets faster and louder and more uncertain than we've ever probably felt before in our lifetimes, it's not just you.
Yes.
It's definitely not just you. So know that there are other sources out there that can help to give you hope and hopefully guidance.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, however you arrived where you are to be here today with us, be it the grace of Mercury not being retrograde right now, whatever it was, we're grateful to have you. We hope you come back. We hope this can be an ongoing series. And let us know what you think, and give us your feedback, because we'd love to have it. And we hope to see you soon.
Yeah. And before we go, though, let everybody know, you are an intuitive, you do sessions for people, where can people find you, and if they want to book a session with you?
So I have a website called Sarah's Soul Wellness. So Sarah's Soul Wellness, all one word, .com. If you go on there, you can book a site, or you can directly email me if there's any problems with the site. I am in the process of revamping the site, so there might be some issues. And if there are, please just email me and let me know that you're interested, and I would love to book a reading. As I say, I do intuitive readings. I do animal communication readings. I also can integrate the astrology into it, so that's an option as well.
Yes,
and something that will be developing. That's something that will be developing as I go forward much more. So yeah, I would love to help you.
Awesome. Yeah, I do think there's a lot of great episodes we could do. I would love to go into the animal communication, the healing more. I think there's so many animal lovers out there and nature lovers. That might be a cool thing to discuss more with you. And then also this blend of astrology, you are using astrology more and more in your intuitive readings. And it's a beautiful blend that I've witnessed you doing, and you're going to be doing more of that. So I highly recommend working with Sarah, because I've gained so much wisdom and insight and support over the years from you. So I definitely recommend her. And I think that we will definitely do this again. I think it'll be fun. So let us know if there's certain things that you would love to hear from Sarah more about, or us to dive more into this conversation about what it is to be a seeker and or both a seer.
And if you want an excellent astrology reading,
no.
Make sure you go to Dominique's website, because you can definitely get her there.
Thank you. Thanks to Sarah, I am doing more coaching and mentoring and teaching. She has brought me out of my shell in that way over the last year. So I am doing more of that if you feel called. So thanks, Sarah. This was awesome. And I look forward to doing it again very soon.
See you next time.
Thanks. Bye. Thanks for listening, and I hope you gained some great astrology insight and inspiration from today's show. I'd love to hear, so drop me a comment or share in a review. Check out the show notes for all the details and links about today's episode, how you can connect with me on social or work with me directly. And don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. Take care and keep nurturing the nature, friends. I'll see you on the next episode.